Srila Gurudev was never a poser. These self-promoting advanced gurus, they're relishing mellows. It's all bullshit. All right? Clear and simple. Gurudev didn't play those games. He told someone once, when they asked him about some spiritual practice, he goes, "Do you want me to make a show? Should I make a show for you? And then you'll feel like you've got a guru." Right? So we know the real Vaishnavas, like Pundarik Vidyanidhi, they're keeping what they've got suppressed. Swarup Damodar, suppressed. That's why Srivas Thakur teases him. And Mahaprabhu, don't tease Swarup. Then it all comes out. So Gurudev, he's keeping it suppressed within it. I am just a simple village boy. I was naughty boy before, now I'm good boy. And all these kind of things. He's actually telling you the truth. They think, oh, he's playing or he's being... He's actually cleverly telling you what the truth is. Now, we're in Geneva with Gurudev, and we go to the Vedanta Society or the Ramakrishna, whatever, and there's this Indian there, and he's going like, I am the only Swami in all of Switzerland, and I have a PhD in bullshit. Right? So then Gurudev, oh, very nice. So he invites Gurudev for this, it was a Kadashi, I remember, as I recall. Anyway, so we're having this program, and what he does, where you should be introducing Gurudev, he's telling everyone how qualified he is. Right? And I got my matriculation from, you know, and I got a MA from here, and I got a PhD from here, and I did this, and I did that, and I'm the only person, and I'm this, and I'm that, and like, and then he does this whole thing. And now I introduce the Swami, what is? Govinda, from, you know, the Bengal. And then Gurudev, like, you know, this, he goes, I am not so qualified. Actually, I'm just a village boy from a little village in Bengal. I have no higher education. I only went to maybe, you know, like 5th grade or something. He didn't even go to high school, you know. So Gurudev starts telling how unqualified he is. And Prabhu here, Swamiji, is extremely qualified in so many ways. I could never hope to be qualified as he is. I'm just a simple village boy, so you'll forgive me for not being so qualified. And then he said, but my Guru Maharaj is very qualified. This is Gurudev. He goes, my Guru Maharaj is very qualified. And by his grace, he took pity on this unqualified person and extended something to me. Then he quoted a sloka, like maybe about the gratitude of disciple for Guru, how rare it is to find Guru in the world, even more rare to find a qualified disciple. Then he talked a little bit more about his disqualifications and quoted another sloka, another sloka. Long story short, with each sloka that Gurudev quoted, and it's heavy Sanskrit, not the simple stuff that everyone, not, you know, yada yada hi dharmas, you know, like, I mean, that's beautiful, but I mean to say, like, heavy, esoteric, long Sanskrit, you know. Every time, because the man's there like this, like a cock, right? As Saraswati Thakur said, he's talking about the leg of a cock. That's what the materialist is. They're so proud, they're stride. And he says, all you do is go and knock them over, done. But they're strutting around like proud cocks. One sloka, the man's head goes. 2 slokas, 3, 4, 20 slokas. After around 30 slokas, he's like, and Gurudev keeps going, I am not so qualified. Now the guy's head is on, I am not so qualified. Hello, I'm not as qualified as you. And then he quotes another sloka, and then in the end the guy's like, and I said, Gurudev, that was like the best I've ever seen. In the name of praising that man, you annihilated him and showed the world what a pompous ass he is. You know, that's his divine grace, Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj. Hare Krishna. I was in Odessa in someone's room, and I swear this is true. They had a white rat in the cage in the room, which made me a little nervous, to tell you the truth. But I was a guest. So I tried to connect with the rat as best we could. And certain delicacy of the fingers convinced me that rat was a person, and just looking at each other. So the next morning I gave mantram to someone in that room. So the rat got mantram and then left the world like a few days later. So what is the Krishna consciousness movement, I ask you? Sometimes we went with Gurudev, invited to somebody's house for dinner. So Saraswati Thakur, that's also there. But, you know, Gaudiya Mat Grihastas, I've met some of them. They're like out of the pages of Charitamrita purports. People with like full temples in their house, deities, 4 or 5 aratis every day, you know, they only take prasadam, they have a whole program going on in their house. Like, you know, Grihastha Vaishnava, even sometimes they're called Grihastha Brahmacharis, you know, which I told about earlier. When Krishna Kshetra, like in Romania, sometimes we would visit with this one Indian professor who was teaching Hindi. And through him, we could have access to his students, teach Bhagavad Gita, give classes, whatever. But we'd cook at his house, and he was very happy. I mean, his wife and family were back in India, and we'd show up, and he'd get all excited. We'd cook some things for lunch, and he showed how to make parathas. And there's different ways to make them. I should show this to Vishaka, because it's like another way where they end up looking like diamond shape, right, or pyramid. But because when you take a circle and fold it in half, and again, it ends up being like that. But there's a few things you do along the way. Anyway, he would do this, so he'd make his part, and he was like really happy to get some association and everything. And we were in saffron dresses, brahmacharis, and he could probably pick up some attitude from us, like, we're brahmacharis, you know, and he's a grihastha or something like that. So he wanted to let us know, like, I know something about brahmacharya too, you know, maybe more than you boys, you know, like. So he's saying, you know, like my wife lives in India, and I see her like once a year. And we're like, yeah? And he said, also, I've had 3 children, and I've never seen my wife naked. At that point, you know, it was just like, Ore Baba. It's like, how do you process that? I'm not trying to put these images in your mind. You know? But he said, I've had 3 children, and I believed him. He said, I've had 3 children, I've never seen my wife naked. We're just like, will you allow us to dress like this in your presence? You know? He means to say, I did this, you know, Bhagavad Gita again, Dharma Virudho Kamosmi. And he was for real. When I had joined, that time has come, I remember, and it was in May of 1971, and so the Sunday feast came, like my first Sunday feast, which was a big deal in ISKCON in those days. And I remember this one devotee, his name was Baladev, and it was the custom of the brahmacharis, everyone really, but especially the brahmacharis, to not only shave your head on Sunday, but what we call back shave. Like you can shave your head, but back shave means if you go in the other direction, then it's very shiny. So we like to do that. Back shave our heads. This was, the feast, an opportunity to preach to people. A really joyous celebration. And Guru Maharaj quotes Vasu Ghosh, the famous of Jadi Gorna Hoita Tabiki Hoita Kemoni Doritam Dehe Radhar Mahima Prema Rasasima Jagata Janatake. His song where he reveals why Mahaprabhu came, the joyous celebration of the glories of Radharani and her Krishna Prem. But in another sloka, I don't know if it's in that song, but another one of his songs he said, what kind of sadhana is this? Whereby singing and dancing and feasting, that's the path. That is our path. Singing and dancing and feasting. So we heard Srila Prabhupada say this so many times, and I always thought that it originated with him, and perhaps it did, but even Vasu Ghosh in the time of Mahaprabhu, he's also saying how wonderful this process is. So anyway, at that Sunday feast, I remember that devotee Baladev, he was preaching to a guest, and he said, because we hear Brahma, Paramatma, Bhagavan, the Jnani's target is impersonal Brahman, the yogi's target is the Paramatma, the super soul within the heart of every living being, and Andantarastam Paramanu Chayantarastam, in the heart of every atom. And then on that point he said, and the yogis, sometimes we hear they're blazing a fire in the summertime, a circle of fire, and sitting in that as an austerity, like this type of heat. Now, you imagine, when it's hot like this, to blaze a fire circle and then sit in the center and meditate. Or, he said, in the winter, in Badrinath it becomes ice cold, the water freezing. You have to poke through the ice to get some water to bathe. At that time, they're meditating. So, his point was, these yogis, jnanis, they're performing so many austerities on their path. And then he picked up gulab jamun, the sweet ball, and with the sugar juice like dripping down on his wrist, and he said, but the bhakti yogi, he feasts, and he threw the gulab jamun in his mouth, and it went like, and juice was like dripping down his chin, and he was laughing, and I thought, I like it here. I'm staying. I thought, if somebody can say something like that, that's enough for me. Then Jai Lakshmi comes in the room. She knocks. I'm listening to tapes of Guru Maharaj. She goes, you should go upstairs and watch the CNN. I go, well, actually, I'm listening to Guru Maharaj now. I listen to his tapes, and no, I'm trying to tell you, America is being attacked by terrorists, and you should go up and watch the CNN, and they'll explain everything. I'm going like, this woman obviously doesn't know what she's talking about. Anyway, just if it'll make you happy, I'll go upstairs and watch CNN and see how America's being attacked by terrorists. Ooh, and then I go upstairs and the woman goes, the second tower has just fallen. And you're like, what? So I'm not going to get into all that, but you have to understand, I'm thinking, suddenly all the airports are closed. This is Brazil. They're saying planes, maybe 50 planes, are flying to each state in America and dropping bombs on the capitals and the government. You know, in other words, they don't say that there's 2, 3 planes. It could be 50, it could be 100, it could be 1,000 planes are now attacking America and blowing up the United States. That's the radio. I look on my notes, and the flight, it says, Mom and Dad, Newark, LA, such and such flight. And I realize my mother and father may be on the flight of all the people who are dead. I think I can either obsess about whether or not my parents are dead, or talk about this 9/11 thing that's on the news all day and night and everybody's talking about it. Or I can just talk about Krishna Katha. And I think the best thing for me, the best thing for everybody here, is if I'll just talk about Krishna and not say one thing about 9/11 or start talking about the world of mortality. Don't do it. Like, don't go there. Just talk about Krishna. You'll be happy, they'll be happy, and we'll all stop obsessing about all this stuff. And at the end of the talk, so I did that, and I was happy, everybody was happy, and then they go, the phone, because you can't call America either, they go, you can now call. And I call and find out, my parents were not going from Newark to LA, they were scheduled to go from LA to Newark, so their flight was canceled. So they're not dead. So I go, you know, Haribol. Hare Krishna. India, the land of the mango. Here we have some very nice mangoes, but 1 or 2. In India, there are maybe 100 or more. I forget how many, but there are a lot. So in the olden times, the kings from the Middle East, I guess you would say, would send a minister to India as it was coming under Muslim rule. And when the minister would come back, or their ambassador, be telling them the wonderful things that are available in India, like the mango. And so the king's always hearing about this mangoes. And the man said, you won't believe how wonderful this nectarine taste of this fruit is. It's inconceivable, it's beyond. And he's saying, why don't you bring me some? He said, well, I tried to bring them, but by the time it takes so long, the journey, they're rotten halfway. And the king's still eager. So first thing we learn, you try and bring that, we say, bring what is in that higher world down here, it gets. It can only descend out of its own necessity, not out of our curiosity or our force, by force to bring it down. So anyway, the ambassador saying, trying to remedy the situation, he thought, all right, I think I can give you the mango experience. So he took some tamarind and some turmeric and some sweet water and juice, and he made a concoction. And then he had his beard, and then he put that in his beard, because some mangoes have beards. Put that in there, and then he told the king, he goes, suck my beard. So then the king's going, and he's saying, now you know what is mango. So for those people So they don't want to go through the trouble of actually trying to make their approach toward the substantial spiritual domain through modest, natural growth. They want to try and bring that divine substance down here. They'll get some sort of experience, but it won't be the real thing. That people who deny the existence of God or believe that you can't prove that God exists, they believe all kinds of other things that you can't prove. And they don't apply the same sort of analysis to those things. Right. That's why that police officer who was with his superior, and they're visiting the mott, and I mentioned sometimes every Bengali's got a little guru in them, you know, and they want to show they know Vedanta or they're, you know, philosophical. So they like to get an opportunity to demonstrate it, or that they're up on the latest scientific theory. So we had a little discussion going perhaps about the subjective evolution of consciousness, and the one man says to me, "It's all quarks. Everything's just quarks. That's all, everything's quarks." And I said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Is your wife a quark?" And he's like, and his boss went, "Ha ha," because he must have to deal with this man like every day. And he said, "Ha ha." I said, "Because if your wife is a quark," you know, and because he went, "Yes." I said, "Oh, she'll be very unhappy to hear that." And he was perplexed what to do. So my point and introducing this is, so when there's all this criteria they want to apply to prove or deny the existence of God. But when it comes to things like love, which cannot be proved, they will say that they love their wives, their children, their dog, their school, their university, whatever. And humor is subjective. Someone's laughing, you know, hysterically, and someone else is not cracking a smile. Or they say, "Well, I don't find that funny at all. I find it, you know, insulting." So many things. Is that the subjective aspect. Reality exists for itself and by itself. Well, and there was a movement called art for art's sake. In the, whenever it was, 19th century or whatever. And as we've mentioned, the picture of Dorian Gray, the introduction, Oscar Wilde makes many observations about art. And he concludes with this statement, "All art is quite useless." And naturally, being a wit, some people, they thought, they took it at face that he's saying it's of no value. That's not what he was saying. When he said it's quite useless, it was a clever way of saying it exists for itself and by itself. If it exists to fulfill some purpose, then that's something less than art. And that's why Guru Maharaj invokes Hegel. If reality exists to fulfill the purpose of another, then it's not for itself and by itself. So we're back to this means of revelation, of divine expression, of Krishna, you know, Nimitta Matra Bhavasavya Sachin, Arjun, you can be an instrument for the expression of my divine will. So it's whether you're Arjun on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, or you're an artist in front of a canvas, or a devotee giving a lecture. The aspiring servitor is offering themselves as an instrument to be used for divine expression. That people who deny the existence of God, or believe that you can't prove that God exists, they believe all kinds of other things that you can't prove. And they don't apply the same sort of analysis to those things. Right. That's why that police officer who was with his superior, and they're visiting the mott, and I mentioned sometimes every Bengali's got a little guru in them, you know, and they want to show they know Vedanta, or they're, you know, philosophical. So they like to get an opportunity to demonstrate it, or that they're up on the latest scientific theory. So we had a little discussion going perhaps about the subjective evolution of consciousness, and the one man says to me, "It's all quarks. Everything's just quarks. That's all, everything's quarks." And I said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Is your wife a quark?" He's like, and his boss went, "Ha ha," because he must have to deal with this man like every day. I said, "Ha ha." I said, I said, "Because if your wife is a quark," you know, and because he went, "Oh, yes." I said, "Oh, she'll be very unhappy to hear that." And he was perplexed what to do. So my point and introducing this is, so when there's all this criteria they want to apply to prove or deny the existence of God. But when it comes to things like love, which cannot be proved, they will say that they love their wives, their children, their dog, their school, their university, whatever. And humor is subjective. Someone's laughing, you know, hysterically, and someone else is not cracking a smile. Or they say, "Well, I don't find that funny at all. I find it, you know, insulting." So many things. Is that the subjective aspect. We can factor in 3 types of Vaishnava: third class, second class, first class. But why not serve all the Vaishnavas as possible? Guru Maharaj would say, even a new person, someone most newly connected person, said, if this is everything we say it is, and now they've expressed appreciation for it and have been accepted, they're now connected to it, then you have to respect them. And he said, God willing, maybe I'm going slowly and they're going very quickly, and they will surpass me. I want to be in a position to receive their grace one day. That's Guru Maharaj's vision. So, but I think of the time, so Gurudev, he arranged the Paschatya Bhavan, made the first building for the servitors, as the number of servitors for the Mat began to expand from the Western world, and like big Gaur Purnima festival is coming. And Gurudev, in service to all the devotees, he's arranging mosquito nets. But it's getting closer and closer to Gaur Purnima, and they're not arriving, and he's and this is before the windows had any screens or anything. That's going to be tough, difficult. Then finally they arrived, and Gurudev was smiling like ear to ear, and he went upstairs, and I was with Guru Maharaj, and he said, now everyone will be happy. The mosquito nets have arrived. And Guru Maharaj looked up and he said, but the mosquito section, they will not be happy. So I thought, he's even thinking of them. they have a place in his heart. This show is titled Beauty Over Power. And interestingly, we can connect this to the talk that Alexander Solzhenitsyn gave in his acceptance of the Nobel Prize for Literature, somewhere around 1976, 78, somewhere around there. And he says in his talk, which is a talk about art, literature, etc., what is the value of these things? Just as people say, what is the value of philosophy? It has no practical value. They will tell people in school, don't study philosophy, study technology so you can get a job, a high-paying job. The only job you can get if you study philosophy is teacher. Has no practical value. But Guru Maharaj will say, yes, philosophy shows its practical value when death approaches, or when we have to deal with death. So here, in his acceptance, Solzhenitsyn, he decided to talk about art. After all, it's the Nobel Prize for Literature. What is the value of art? What is the value of telling a story? Is there any value? Or it's just, it has some entertainment value. But anything substantial it deals with that's of lasting value? So he began his talk by saying that Dostoevsky once let drop the enigmatic phrase that beauty will save the world. Like Guru Maharaj hearing the Vedas, and he thought that was a peculiar statement. When Solzhenitsyn heard Dostoevsky say, beauty will save the world, he thought, really? Does he really mean that? Maybe he just was speaking informally and he said that, but it wasn't a seriously thought out proposition. But then he thought, but Dostoevsky is a master. He doesn't misspeak often. And if he said this, maybe there's something special there. He meant it to be understood in a very serious way. It wasn't just some charming repartee, but something valuable and substantial there. And then he thought, and in his own, perhaps his own example, said that truth and justice, they proceed more or less in linear fashion in our general conception of them. Right? He said, but beauty, and now I'm paraphrasing and embellishing, ahiraiva kata premna swabhava kutila bhavet. He acknowledged indirectly that beauty moves in an unpredictable way, not in a linear style. This is when we talk of harmony in the conception of beauty, like the face. They will show very beautiful women or handsome men and take the face in half, and if you they don't look good when you put two identical halves together, but when a real face has a look, there are a variety of elements that are unified in a beautiful present, and the ultimate presentation is beautiful. So it means harmonizing disparate, or what's the word? Various elements. So saying, but truth and justice, they're more linear in their approach. But beauty moved. Rupa Goswami says, ahiraiva kata prema swabhava kutila bhavet, like the movements of a serpent. The serpent's movements overall are progressive, but they move in a zigzag way. But the overall effect is progressive. Saying the pastimes of Krishna are like that. The beauty of Krishna is like that. The form of Krishna is like that. The pastimes of Krishna are like that. So he said, since that which moves in a straight and linear line, it has a tendency to get chopped down. Right? But what moves in a zigzag, serpentine way can, in his words, he said, perhaps do the job of all three: truth, justice, beauty. Here we're saying truth, auspiciousness, and beauty. So the auspiciousness aspect, shivam, satyam, truth, truthfulness. But is the ultimate conception of truth realized in that, or comprehensively expressed as auspiciousness? It must be auspicious, good for everyone. Reality is for itself and by itself. But still something is lacking there, and what that is sundaram, beauty, charm, sweetness. So the ultimate conception of the ultimate truth, or the absolute truth, is beautiful. Reality, the beautiful absolute. We celebrate the Govardhan Puja and Go Puja, the worship of the cows. And we know on Srila Gurudev's veranda, he's sitting there. If anyone will walk before him with a bag of something, whatever it might be, he has to know what's inside. You can't just walk by him. He'll stare. He'll want to know. So those who are his permanent servitors, his veranda servitors, like Bhakti Lalita, she would just show him all of her stuff without him asking, knowing that he wanted to see it. So one of the things that, there was a refrigerator that she used and some others, and so she would get her how do you say, whatever she was eating for that day, and have to walk in front of Gurudev. So she would just turn and show him, like, just present it to him, and he'd look. Especially, he had some extraordinary interest in different types of food. So she showed him one day, and there's like different types of lettuce and celery and green things and like that. And Gurudev looked down like this and he said, "I can see that your Lord is Krishna." Like that. And then and she looked at me like, "What's that?" I said, "I can see your Lord is Krishna." And he looked at me to see if I caught what he said. And then I started smiling and laughing. And what he meant was, who is Krishna? We just celebrated Govardhan Puja. Gava Indra, Govinda, the Lord of the cows. So he's saying, when I look at what you're about to eat, it looks like cow food to me. But to say that would be insulting. So what did he say? I can see that your Lord is Krishna. I met a crazy man once at a bus stop outside of a mental institution. And we both were looking at a ladybug. And we were both like looking at this ladybug. And I said to him, "What do you call a male ladybug?" And he said, "Sir." And what he was showing me is like, I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid. And I thought, good point. I mean, sometimes here we have a lot of insect friends. I just saw a few on the way over. And sometimes, and they're in my room, I like to put them in little containers and let them go out the window. But sometimes I look at them and I imagine they're looking at me, you know, and I think, I don't think I'm better, but sometimes I am a little surprised to realize there's a soul animating that insect body, and what takes you to that plane scares me at times. I'm not scared of the insect, but like being one. But Bhaktivinoda, see, he's not afraid of that. Kita janmaho jata tu andasha bahir mukha brahma nahi janmayash. See, real devotee, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, if I don't want to be Brahma if he's not a devotee. I'd rather be Kita, an insect in the house of a devotee. That is taken on a far, far greater, deeper level. And what does Raghunath Das say? The Prayojan Tattvacharya, that even the insects and the Dham are Mukunda Dvaita. They're dear to Krishna because they're Leelanukul, they're helping promote the pastimes. But Guru Maharaj would say, this kind of vision of seeing Dambasis as liberated souls, and that's what he calls Mukta Drishti. It's the vision of a liberated soul. Back to that. But we want to be under the influence of the vision of liberated souls, those who can see. They're seeing properly. That is the point. But relative has its necessity. So but we need, unless you properly conceive the absolute, then how will you know how to adjust the relative? Adjust it according to what? There has to be, again, that calibration. According to what? To what standard? No, all right, here's the absolute standard. Here we are locally. Adjust it like this. That'll be acceptable.